While we began as a really small unit of 5, we grew to the size of 100 members in 3 years and over 300 members in 5 years. From a revenue standpoint, we have grown from being a 2.5 crore top-line brand in the first year to about 100 crores in 5 years. With operations across SEA, CGG, from PwC as a financial consultant, spreading out his wings to Web 18, to TIL as a content marketer, and eventually leading up to set up Folk Media. Well, that seems as quite a journey. Don't you think, guys? A round of applause. A few words, please.
That's quite an introduction. Thank you, Chandni. Yeah, and it's GCC, not CGG. Just saying. But thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for coming here. Thank you for the support. I think this is a very big event for us. Thank you, Sunny. Thank you, ma'am, for being a part of this. And thank you for coming on board on How to Fly. It's a very significant day for us. It's a very significant move for us. We do hope to kind of go strength to strength from here. The next 3 or 5 years, we are looking at kind of taking leadership position in the space that we're in, which is media tech. And that is the ambition for us. We would start by kind of revealing our first collaboration with Sunny, which is the video that we did. We were all on tenterhooks because we wanted to make sure that we were kind of matching up to every bit that Sunny expected from us, and I hope we've done that. I think you've seen the video. Would love to understand what your feedback on that is. So I think let's start with the video to begin with, and then we can get on to the panel discussion if that's fine with the audience. Yeah? Okay, lovely. Let's do this. Guys, can you have a big round of applause for this one? I think it's a fabulous effort on Sunny's part. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to be referring to my notes. Don't go by that prolific introduction that she did. I'm a bit slow on this one. So I'm going to start by kind of just calling the panel on stage. I'll start with the star, of course. Yeah. Thank you. I needed that. We'll start with Sunny first. Actress, superstar in every right, philanthropist, and more importantly, inspiration to millions of women who look up to you for having led your life with utmost dignity and respect, ma'am. Can we please have you on the stage? Can we have a big round of applause for Sunny, please? Where am I supposed to sit? I've been told I have to look in the camera there, so I think I'm sitting. Second from the left, which is my left? Oh shit! Oh, this one. Yeah, I'm sitting here. Yeah. Okay. Lovely. The next guest is a prolific marketeer, ex-marketing director, Pepsi, Vani Gupta. Vani has had a long, rewarding career of over 20 years, starting with advertising across a bunch of MNCs like PepsiCo, Unilever, and Reckitt Benckiser. Vani Gupta, can we please have you on the stage, ma'am? I definitely will, I promise you that. I'll make up for all the paparazzi there. Okay, the next guest in the panel is somebody from one of my favorite brands in terms of content marketing. It's Bacardi. Eshita Jaiswal. Eshita Jaiswal is the digital head for Bacardi across India and Southeast Asia and leads digital strategy, social media, content marketing for iconic brands like Bacardi, Breezer, Grey Goose, Bombay Sapphire, Divars, William Lawson's. Ma'am, can you do a barter, please? Is that possible? Eshita Jaiswal, can we please have her on the stage, guys? A big round of applause. The next and the last guest that we have is somebody from Reckitt Benckiser, Bhavna Mittal. Bhavna Mittal is the head of media, digital, and communication with a career span of more than 20 years. She's been associated with various reputed brands and campaigns. Bhavna is the regional head of media and digital for R&B. Guys, can you have a big round of applause for the panel, please? Who needs a mic? I think you need it. I have one. You have one. Wow.
How does it feel? More women than you.
I have to admit I'm a bit nervous here in the company of these absolutely esteemed women here. Pardon me, I'm a nervous wreck right now. But I'm going to start by kind of opening the floor here with a very simple question that I've had in my mind. When I was looking at the profiles of all 4 of you, the first question that hit me was that is glass ceiling really a myth? Because look at the four of you. You've kind of shattered every notion of glass ceiling in your respective careers. Does it really exist across the industry, across professions, across careers? Because if it really did, would the four of you really be where you are today? Or is it really something that exists and we've had to kind of fight hard to battle the glass ceiling that really exists there? So I mean, it's an open question for the floor.
Okay, let me take a stab at it. I think it definitely does exist. It's not a myth. It is very, very true, and it's not just the big understanding of what is the glass ceiling. It's also the many different small ways in which women find themselves disadvantaged or discriminated against. And I think it's a constant struggle, especially when there are very few women at the top, and especially where there are very few women breaking stereotypes. And Sunny's smiling at me because she has such a powerful story of her own. But for a lot of us in the corporates, I can tell you, because there are such few women at the top, you're constantly battling stereotypes. You're constantly battling the notion that you yourself are alone. So a lot of times, actually, it's a battle with yourself, because you have to keep telling yourself that even though mine is the only voice, I must make it heard for the sake of the many women who might hopefully someday come to where I am.
Okay, I completely agree with you. In fact, the glass ceiling definitely exists. I know there are a lot more women today that are breaking through and shattering through, and sort of provide that inspiration for other younger women out there. And not just in the field of corporates, I feel across the board. Like, you look at an initiative like Girls Who Code. It's a global initiative, and it was primarily done because somebody on a US campaign trail discovered that there aren't enough women in computer sciences. And coding and technology is the way of the future, as we all know with folk media and the kind of solutions you guys are doing. But that doesn't seem to be the case. And that's why a lot of initiatives now are being taken up. I fear implementation is a challenge, and that's something that needs to be large scale. And in India, the interpretation of glass ceiling is very different, right? So a glass ceiling for somebody else might be my everyday. So I work in an alcohol industry, right? But I have colleagues who are female, who have to clearly take a stand to say, yes, with their in-laws, for instance, to say, yes, I can work in an alcohol industry, and it's not a vice, it's a lifestyle, right? And that, for me, I could take it as, okay, this is my norm. But for somebody else, it's completely different. Just a story, for instance, of a colleague of mine is transitioning from being a male to a female in the office. And just for something as small as which washroom should I use, right? For me, that's such a normal thing. But for somebody else, that's their glass ceiling. So it's so different for each strata, each kind of person. And it definitely does exist, in India for sure. There are steps that are being taken, but I feel platforms like this are super important to build that even further.
Sure.
Okay, so just really to the point, Eshta and Vani, and I would love to hear your comments on it, Sunny, because you come from a slightly different industry than the three of us are here. But Samar, just to ask you a question, how difficult did you find us to get us three here in the first place? Because if you knew that you had to get a mix of guys and girls, it would have been far easier. But getting three women on top here and be sidelined here, it would have been a bit of a difficult task.
No, I completely agree. And I'll tell you this, that I've also seen a lot of progress in the last 2 years. The number of women that I'm seeing in the management teams, and I can tell you that my company, which is Fork, is a living example of that. And I look around in the office and I find so many more women that are kind of completely shattering this notion of glass ceiling, and are coming out in management positions and are kind of completely breaking any level of preconceived notions that you've had around women leadership.
Yeah. But I think, that's happening in the new age companies. If you go back to slightly more traditional companies like the ones which Vani and I come from, there you will still not find women really breaking through. So there, I know that after a point in time, there is somewhere where beyond this, either I move out or I decide to do what I am and be happy with it. So, I mean, just actually coming to straight to the elephant in the room, but that's what it is. Because you know that there is a boys' club there, there is this alpha male club which is there, and you, even if you are better than them, you might be as good as them, but you have to have a far more daunting approach to take on the world, and that's where the strength in numbers comes in, which Vani mentioned, because there would be one or two women. The boards, I mean, the Indian company laws say that you need to have one women director. One women director is too less because she's sidelined. She's not going to go into the smoking room and where all the decisions are made.
True.
So it exists, and it is a fact which we all battle every single day.
Sure. Sunny, do you want to comment on this?
The glass ceiling. I call them the glass ceiling or a wall or a bumper. I think that every single person in business goes through this. In my experience, I've hit a lot of those walls, a lot of those bumps, a lot of those ceilings. But I do have an amazing team around me, which I give credit to. But I also think that those glass ceilings and those barriers and those barricades and bumpers are actually a tool to learn something. I am not in the corporate world, so I don't know what that feels like. But I do run my own world, and I do know the difficulties that I face, that my team faces, that we face on a daily, or that we face on, maybe it's every 6 months. Something insane comes our way, and it's horrible. The amount of press that subject gets, or things that happen. And all I have to say is that I've grown from those. And there's no one that can stop me. There's no one that can completely barricade me and put me in a cage and tell me no. That's how I see it. And the more someone tells me no, the more someone puts up those barricades, the more I fight. But that's my personality, and I know that there's a lot of women out there that feel like maybe they're alone, or maybe that they can't do it. And something that I learned a really long time ago was, if you're not gonna ask, then you're not gonna get it. If you're not gonna say, I want this, then it's never gonna come to you. If you don't voice what you want, then you're never gonna get there. Maybe it's more difficult, trying to get into that room where decisions are made, but, until you start saying it over and over again, maybe not your situation, but maybe somebody else's, that as a woman, you have to voice what you want. And then you say, I want this, how am I gonna get there? And if you're gonna put a barrier up, how do I get around that barrier? Because I know I'm better than you. I know I work harder than you. And I know my trade or craft, anything better than you do, whether you're a male or a female. So it's also, I think, a personal journey, like you had mentioned.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully said, really, Sunny, that's really beautifully said. It speaks a lot of the kind of power and resilience that you have inside of you. But, I think the point one was trying to make was the fact that one should have to do this. One should have to prove to oneself and to others that I am better than you. I know I'm better than you. I know I worked hard and I can deliver more than you. The fact that one has to do this can sometimes be exhausting.
Oh, and it's exhausting every single day.
Exactly. So, and I think that's where the tension is, and that's the tension that we're addressing in this conversation, which is, why is it that women have to try so much harder when women are fundamentally, and research has proven so, in so many aspects of leadership, in so many aspects of collaboration, of nurturing, of integration, of bringing people together, are able to deliver so much more. It's been proven in research, it's been, we see it in the small networking groups, at levels where there are more women, and yet women have to work as hard to get to the top, and there just aren't enough women at the top.
Yeah, I agree with you. In fact, you'd completely agree with this, but the kind of funding that women entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that are led, like entrepreneurships that are led by females, is far lesser than what men get. And it's globally. It's Silicon Valley all the way down to India and the venture funding that happens here. And it's been proven, like you said, that there was a study that was done which said that women who have more executives and board members, those companies have 74% or something more return on equity. So, I mean, there's data to prove it, but the thinking and the mindset needs to start moving beyond that. And the other thing that starts to happen is then a lot of the women who are, so they're, I mean, we're a bunch of outspoken, fearless women out here, but there are a lot of women who sort of then go into their shell. And then you get the imposter complex, you know, where you're like, am I even in the right place? There's a lot of self-doubt, there's a lot of self-esteem challenges where when you're alone in the boardroom or you're alone in a big group full of men, where you really wouldn't necessarily want to speak out and you just want to sort of settle in and belong rather than make a name or have your point of view out there.
But then maybe she's not supposed to be there. I agree with a lot of things that you say, but then I have this feeling that if I feel so insecure and if I feel so in my shell, then maybe I should grow a pair and speak up, because a lot of people don't do that. And I think when you're speaking or anybody here is speaking, it's because we have figured out how to speak out. And you know, that woman that's sitting in that boardroom and going, oh, I'm so scared to speak, or I have this issue, let me tell you, in my household all the time. These women who work around, well, we all sat there and got an injection and saw the doctor, but why didn't you speak up? And I say this to women all the time, but that sort of mentality I feel is so hard to change. Now, what are the steps in your opinion? How do you change that?
So, firstly, I feel so going back to why, like a lot of it is societal conditioning of how, as a society, women are not necessarily meant to be heard. And that's something that over the years and with movements like Me Too, sort of a lot more women sort of speak up, feel like this is what I'm worth and I should be there and speak about it. And I feel like the more we sort of facilitate movements and platforms like that, the more women who definitely deserve to be where they are feel far more self-assured to go out there and do a lot more. And I feel role models, like you said, right? Having a book like, say, Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg got a whole lot more women to say, okay, I can be ambitious without being considered bossy in the boardroom. And a lot of it is, I feel, very, very strong conditioning. Like, I think we're fortunate to be from families which are fairly liberal about these things. But to fight that, you do need strength. And it either comes from a sisterhood or a team that supports you the whole way through.
Sure.
So if a woman, so if a woman is stuck
yes.
in a room and it's just her and 5 men, does she not feel that validation of sitting there? Or does she still feel scared? What does she do to grow out of that?
You're absolutely right, Sunny. Actually, the thing is, this is not something that plagues women alone. Yeah. This is actually personality types. Because what you're talking about is the ability to have, the ability to speak up. It's about having the confidence of knowing that if I have a point of view, I must put it out there. You know, there's doctors in the room, you didn't speak up for 30 minutes, for God's sake, when the doctor was there, why didn't you speak? Oh, I was feeling very shy, I didn't know how to talk about this, what would he think about blah? But this is not something that plagues women alone. There are enough number of introvert men as well. I think this is more a personality type. And the problem is that when we have discussions like these, it is not about specifically only addressing women. It's actually about addressing the need for having diverse opinions and the need for respecting, like you talked about that case in your office about this person who's going through a sex change, but the ability for us to collectively respect and give dignity to diverse opinions, because everybody doesn't have to be, oh, I'm out there and I have the ability to sit on stage and talk. Everybody doesn't need to be. But everybody has something to contribute, and we must be able to respect that and get the best from everyone.
Sure. I know I said I was nervous, and thanks for kind of taking the stage completely, which is lovely. I have a question, because I've been thinking about this, and I look at women from varied walks of life, and I do feel the intensity of discrimination kind of differs basis the field that you choose. You spoke about new age companies, you spoke about modern day work environments. Do you feel that the field that you choose also defines the intensity of the discrimination? Like, for example, in the movies, where it is so widespread, and we've had a movement where the women have come out and they've spoken so extensively about the kind of discrimination that they've faced. Do you really feel that there are modern day environments that are basically far more conducive to merit-driven ecosystems where discrimination is not really as prevalent as you would find in traditional environments?
So, okay, I was just doing some reading up on this, and there is like traditional women kind of fields like nursing and all. That's where they say that the men take the glass elevator and women still get stuck with the glass ceiling. So even in the traditional, like even if it's like cooking, like chefs, you'll see more chefs who are male in a traditional so-called female domain. You'll know far more Michelin level chefs who are guys than who are women. So I think it's a society thing, it's a mindset thing. It is also that because of various reasons, women start dropping off at the middle level. So just very few of us reach really to the top level. And coupled with the fact that there are few of us at the top, and sometimes they say that a woman is a woman's worst enemy. So, touching upon a very raw nerve here. But there are times when, people really try to play the politics between women, and just somewhere doesn't add up. Sure. So I really don't think it's to do with domain. Again, another statistic which I saw, I mean not really numbers here, but glass ceiling also exists for minorities. So if you look at Asians in, let's say, US, but even the men there will do better than the women. So women white is okay, men non-white is okay, women non-white is like somewhere down there, right? So it just doesn't add up. So you have to work yourself far harder, far stronger, come to the point that say, okay, look at me, I have delivered, guys, please, I've worked hard enough, I deserve this. I mean, one of my very old bosses, like I remember at a time, he said, oh, I know you've been doing very well, but you're a woman, you're a single girl who stays with a mom. That guy's got 2 daughters, let me give him better increment. And on my face, and that time, I mean, I'm talking about like about 10, 15 years ago, HR practices were not so developed, you were not so aware. So today's day and age, I would have taken him to task in front of the HR team and said that, what's happening? But at that point in time, you were not aware. You were like, okay, maybe there's, I shouldn't ask for something, So things happen, and it's just conditioning. I think we've just kind of gotten into that.
Do you have a perspective in that?
I think the narrative's changed a little bit. The conversations that we've driven are far more significant. And then there is a filter down effect that happens, right? So as much as it's a glass ceiling, it's also a class ceiling. Like, that's wordplay, I love it. But that's essentially what it is, right? So when you have, and we were talking about this earlier, on folk media, for instance, you have an equitable split of genders. And possibly different kinds of backgrounds, whether it's education, whether it's different parts of the country. My team in Bacardi, if you look at marketing, 75% women. But the moment you go into sales, and the moment you go into the smaller towns of sales, that thing gets skewed. And one of the things that we can do as a concentrated effort, apart from platforms, initiatives, having conversations like this, is also to make sure that at the very entry level, when we're recruiting, at the very base level for sales, we make sure that that's equitable. Rather than saying, I'm going to have a mandated percentage of women that have to be at the top level, it needs to start from the bottom. And honestly, like you said, it's about not just raising your women to be smarter, more assertive, but to raise your men to be more sensitive, right? To be more empathetic. And that's where I feel like the challenge is not just a female problem. It's a humanity problem. And as long as you agree and you want to be respectful to humans and their points of view, you'll pretty much learn something from it.
That's an interesting point you make there about, how to kind of raise our men in the society, because there is a very clear discrimination when you have male ambition versus female ambition. And success clearly does not come without ambition. Now, we've seen that male ambition typically gets celebrated with much fanfare. You're referred to as the alpha male.
We were just talking about it. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure. I was actually kind of quietly listening to your conversation there, and I picked it up.
Way to go, getting your notes right.
No, but genuinely, I've seen this. I mean, my wife is also a founder of a content startup, and I've seen this where I won't lie that I had a slight issue dealing with it when she began. And I started thinking to myself, saying that, am I being a chauvinist here? Because it's so deeply rooted into our psyche, right? And it's true, and I won't deny it. I have no qualms in denying it, that it's very deeply rooted in the Indian psyche, Indian male psyche, where the man is referred to as the alpha male, right? You're spoken of as the aggressive guy, the smart guy, the hot, sexy guy who's really ambitious. The moment the female ambition is laid out on the table, the prefixes become negative. They're nasty, insulting at some point. So does that deter women from putting out their ambition or laying out the ambition on the table in a very bare fashion, just as a man would do it? Because you may fear being judged for that, judged at home, judged at work, because that is really what kind of happens at our workplaces.
Yeah, I think over here I'd like to take on Sunny's narrative and the point that she's been trying to make over here. I don't think there is any option but to be able to put yourself out there and to be able to say that I am able to do this better than anyone else. There is no better way to do it than to be able to get comfortable with self-promotion. Men are very, very comfortable with that. Besides, men are raised to believe that there is nothing that you can't do. There's nothing you can't achieve. There's no field, that you can't make a mark in. But women are I don't know whether we're taught to be. I wasn't taught to be. But why do women naturally have a tendency to have a lot of self-doubt? Women generally tend to be accommodating. It's not just accommodating. Also, I look at myself. I always approach everything with, I think I need to learn some more. I'm not so sure if I know it absolutely well. I might actually be the most capable person in the room, and I'm still questioning and asking, maybe I need to find out about this as well. Maybe I need to learn some more. It's just, I think that's also what actually makes women better leaders. It's also what makes women better empathetic people managers. But that is not seen like that. It's seen as maybe she's actually not as capable. So there is no shortcut to this, but to be able to train ourselves and train girls to be able to self-promote, to be able to say, I'm good at this, please look at me, this is my work, exactly as Sunny was saying it. You just have to be more unabashed about it.
But Vani, sorry.
Or we all need a shot of testosterone.
Sorry?
Or we all need a shot of testosterone.
But just interjecting here for a moment. What I really want to understand is, does it deter you today at your workplaces from laying out the ambition, from being the ambitious person that you may be, because that's your personality? Does it stop you from being that person? Because I've seen workplaces, and these are modern day workplaces, media entities, where women are judged for their ambition. You're called names, you're called things that are not very pleasant. And that's really what I'm trying to get to. Does it stop you from putting out the ambition? And probably you're kind of keeping it slightly, you're playing it down, and you're keeping it to yourself, unlike, the male boss or the manager who would unabashedly put it out on the table and kind of talk about wanting to kind of be the CEO in the next 3 to 5 years. You don't tend to see too many women talking with that level of aggression. And that's what I'm trying to get to.
You haven't been to my office. My employees don't
I think they'll
like
be very
when I
happy to
give it
come,
to
Sunny.
them.
I can promise you that. They'll be very happy to come to your office.
Bhavna was talking about this earlier. One can't not be one's true self. You have to be your own true self. And you have to be able to enjoy doing what you're doing. So if surviving at office is an everyday, every moment struggle, where every moment I'm proving to everyone I'm good at this, then at some point in time, for everything that we've said, including taking on the responsibility of being role models, etc., one says, I really don't need this shit. I can do better than this. So it's a question of making sure that we as people are happy. And I think in doing that also, we're being role models to everyone out there. Not just men, not just women, but also men. Because like I said, I think it's important to show others that I have the wisdom and the bravado and the courage inside me to do what makes me happy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel as long as you're passionate about what you're doing, and at the end of it, you're proud. Like there's a sense of pride about the work that you do. And I think all of us have that. The name calling and the backstabbing and all of that is just like war wounds, like it sort of falls in the wayside, because eventually if you're your true authentic self and you're proud of what you do, you give it your 100%, enough people will know it. And the moment you move from saying, I want external validation, where everybody else needs to be happy with me and I start pleasing them, that's when you start becoming the sort of person that everybody wants you to be, but you're not necessarily who you are. So it's so important to sort of be centered and know what drives you. And eventually, if you're doing enough of the right things, people will notice.
And Esther, just to add to that, if you actually look for too much external validation, it falls flat, because people start seeing you as a doubting Thomas, saying that, oh my God, this woman is not confident about herself because she needs 10 people to say that she's on the right track. So just your confidence, just your own personality and the way you conduct yourself, that should come out, and just be authentic and true to yourself. And I think things follow. The things will come to your side if you realize that maybe I don't want to be the aggressive person who wants to put out an ambition saying that I want to be the CEO in 3 to 5 years. There are times when you just say, okay, I might want to be the CEO in 3 to 5 years, but maybe this is not the place which will value me. Yes. And there is something else which I know I'll be able to do far happier and far more genuine to my own self than what I'm doing right now. And that's the decision sometimes.
No, I completely agree, and I think that is not only true for women, that's true for everyone.
So here's my problem with millennials, is that no one wants to work anymore. No one wants to put in the time. No one wants to learn their craft. No one wants to, 4 years for school, who wants to do that? Who wants to start at the bottom when they could call mommy and daddy and be here the next day, but not know jack shit? So this is my biggest issue with what happens in the workforce or anywhere that I've been, is no one wants to put in the time. And I'm sorry, here's the deal. You have to put in your time. You have to know your craft or your trade. You have to know what you're talking about. You have to stay up all night long, whether you're a man or a woman, and you have to do that. There is no time for rest when you want to get somewhere in business, and that's just what it is. So whether you're a man or a woman, you have to face the walls, you have to face the ceilings, you have to face all that, no matter what. If someone in my office doesn't know what they're talking about, trust me, they hear it from me. And they don't like it, and there's nothing I can do about it. Am I sensitive? Absolutely not. And I don't know, that's just who I am. It's a small percentage of sensitivity, right guys? Yeah, a little bit. So there's a little bit, and the same thing goes with Daniel.
That was the Indian nod, by the way.
Yeah, it's good.
Which is a yes
it's a
and
half
no.
and half. That's fine, I'll take it. But there is no room for any of that. If you don't know what you're doing at the end of the day, and you mess up or you make a mistake that I know that you're better than what you've done, then you're going to hear it. And that's just what it is. And that, I think, is in any business. And I think that if you're a woman in the office and you know you're doing a good job and you know you're putting in your time and you know that you're good at what you're doing, any good businessman is going, or woman, if your boss is a woman or it's a man, but we're talking about men being the boss, he's going to see that. He's going to see who you are eventually. Maybe it takes a little bit longer than it does the person next to you, who is a man, who just seems to be flying his way right to the top. Well, great, good for him. But it might be a slower climb up that ladder. But I do believe any good business person is going to see through the bullshit, is going to see what I call like cutting the fat in business. We cut out the extra fat and we find what is good for us. That's what I believe. I don't sit in an office, unfortunately, so I don't know or feel the things that some women do. I just know what goes on in my office, and I know how I handle business. And I am not so sensitive than
Sunny,
some of the other people
It does
are.
feel like the kind of environment that you have at your office and the kind of setup that it is far more open, forthright, sort of completely transparent, saying, I don't agree with what you said there. But in a lot of other larger setups, there are so many other politics and dynamics at play, and to navigate them, it does take a lot of energy. But eventually, you kind of know the ways of the game, and you know how to get things done. And I think it's complete credit to you that if you have such an open door policy, and a lot of companies will on day zero of recruitment be like, yeah, you walk into the MD's office anytime, and then when you try and get in there for a conversation about your career, you kind of hit the ceiling, right? So I think that's where women do need to know what they're worth, like you said, be far more assertive and put the time in, because entitlement will only get you so far, right? So whether you are a man or a woman, whether you had contacts and you got through, or you sort of just found your way through and it's a smooth sailing thing, eventually you will have to put that time in and be able to do it, whether there are politics at play or not. And if you feel you don't belong, then you just start something of your own like you did.
Ashla, taking on from what you said, so we can safely conclude and assume that there is definitely a glass ceiling at work for women, right? Now, let's say you're experiencing it and you're clearly witnessing it. What is the recourse? What do you do? I mean, do you really give in and move on? Or do you stay along and fight the battle? And for how long? Because from what I hear, and I completely agree with that, it's an extremely exhausting battle. These are, deep-rooted psyches that you're fighting. It's a DNA shift that you're talking about. It's a pivotal shift. So for the younger lot that's kind of watching this and that's kind of, hearing you guys talk, what is that you guys would have done in similar kind of situations?
So I genuinely believe in, firstly, making sure that you've got the A-team with you. Like, make sure that at your workplace, whether it's a sisterhood or it's a sister and brotherhood, it doesn't matter, but find your tribe. People that you connect with, people who value you and you value them. And eventually when there are days that you have a terrible time, there will be someone to go back to, and they become sounding boards for what should I do now. And that sort of starts to happen, and that's why when you spend 10 hours at a workplace, you eventually develop those friendships, and those bonds sort of strengthen you and give you perspective as well. Sometimes you'll come back and say, you know what, my boss really messed up and I'm really angry about it. But they come back and they could say something like, no, you were wrong at this, right? So you need somebody to give you that perspective. It doesn't matter if it's someone senior, someone junior, your own team, colleagues, wherever. But I feel like that's critical to sort of give you that perspective. It could be a parent for all you know, but you definitely need somebody there to navigate. And if you feel passionately and you feel like you're doing the right thing, you will fight for it. And it's not that much of a challenge when you sort of become stronger with it. And if you genuinely feel like I'm worth so much better and I'm never going to get my way through here, you'll go ahead and you'll do your own thing. Eventually you'll be okay as long as you know what you're worth and you're willing to sort of invest in time and learn things. So yeah, I mean, that would be my sort of 2 cents. If you feel like there's a serious problem, then definitely report it, speak out. Because you could be setting an example for somebody else who's probably shy to speak out, sees you there and says, you know what, this has happened to me as well. So there, you have to draw that line.
Right.
I just want to add to the last bit that she said, which was, there is no choice but to speak up about it. And it's not just about speak out about the big things, but speak out about the everyday small things. Whatever it is, I think the fact that there are few women, there is no running away from the fact that we do bear the burden of making sure that we are changing things or setting a tide which could bring a larger change in the future. Because we have to think about our children, we have to think about how work will be done henceforth. But there is no other way than to be able to speak about it, even if it is tough to talk about it, even if, there might be tears shed sometimes, or it may come at the risk of the next promotion, or it may come at the risk of you being called the B word, whatever it be.
Oh, I love that. You call me a bitch any day. what I learned was it's okay to be a bitch.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's okay.
You
I
take
mean,
pride in being the
within
bitch.
your limits, of course, you shouldn't just be nasty,
Yeah.
but it's okay to put your foot down and be a bitch.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And say, I am the bitch. Yeah, now deal with me. Exactly. Yeah, so I think there is no other way but to talk about it.
And I think just to add to what these girls have said, it's very important for us to also develop the right talent. So we don't really understand it, but there are a lot of women at the junior levels who are actually looking up to us.
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
And so what you do, how you conduct yourself, all the subtle hints you're giving out is something which you don't realize, but that's what's happening. So if they see you down and out after a meeting, and then they see you, okay, buckle up and say, okay, I'm going to get my groove back. They know that, this is how things need to be handled, and it's really how this woman is doing it, and this is how she's done it for the last 20 years or whatever, and this is how it works. So that, and then secondly, picking up people in your team, outside the team, to just have informal conversations, just kind of mentoring conversations with them, saying that, I saw you do this, I think that was good, keep up to it, stick your grounds, because that's the way we are actually making sure that there are going to be more like us as we go forward, right? Like there are obviously lesser percentage gaps now versus maybe 20 years ago, maybe versus 40 years ago. So maybe the next 20 years, that these are the people who've just entered the career, and these are the women you need to take care of, and just be that kind of a mother hen at times.
Yeah,
but just
absolutely.
make sure that they are protected and they know that they are doing right.
Right. No, that's very interesting. I truly believe that no conversation on gender discrimination would be complete without kind of dealing with the elephant in the room, which is pregnancy. And it's funny because, you see this pretty much daily at corporates, where the perception that they try and put out is they're very friendly, we celebrate pregnancy, we're going to support you completely. But what follows behind closed doors is hushed conversations. What follows behind closed doors is, jokes about pregnancy, about the fact that there's going to be vacuum at work, about the fact that she's never going to be the same. Is that really true? Because I've seen this in media setups. I've seen this in very, very large media setups. And is that very limiting? And how do you kind of bring about a change to that kind of perception? And Sunny, this is very true for the movie industry as well, because we've seen this extremely prevalent in the movie industry, where you've had, the yesteryear actresses who've become absolutely redundant after having a child. Now, the question that arises is, was it lack of evolution at the producer's end or the audience's end? And I would like to believe that it's the former. It's not the audience which is less accepting, it's the producer who's less accepting. And that is what kind of, in some sense, I mean, if I can say it, drives, it kind of gets my goat, because I'm like, how does that change what you feel or how passionately you feel about your work? I've seen mothers to kind of become even more task-oriented, to become even more efficient, because they're multitasking at all points. But do you see that? Do you see that dynamic play out in the corporate world? Because I see it all the time. And do you see that dynamic play out in the movie industry as well?
Well, I think in the entertainment industry, I think everybody here can agree with me, is we are seeing a shift in this idea of having children and being able to work. Kareena Kapoor is a perfect example of that, where she is unstoppable. She's so amazing, and she works so hard, and she's still going at it. She's got herself back in shape to what she wants, and still has that drive and determination to keep working, which I think is absolutely amazing, and we should applaud her for that. And not taking those stereotypes and, kind of going to the wayside. I'm so happy she didn't do that. I am a different case and matter, because I just don't care what people think, and I'm not, I wasn't born and raised here. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. What I'm saying is that my whole system and makeup and how I think is completely different. For me, I chose surrogacy and I chose adoption because I wanted to keep going and I wanted to keep working, and that was my own personal choice. I thought I was going to have one. I had three. That I wasn't planning on, but it's God's plan. Not my plan. That's God's plan. But I wouldn't change. I wouldn't change anything. My life is crazy, and my children were very upset that I was leaving the house today, and it broke my heart. But I wanted to be here, and I want to do this just as much as I want to see them. And I believe that I'm a better mother if I'm working and providing for my children than if I'm a stay-at-home mother. I'm not saying that being a stay-at-home mother is wrong. I'm saying God bless you for being the stay-at-home mother. But I feel that I'm a better person, I'm a better mother, I'm a better human being working than not working. And I think that my children will thank me one day for working.
Completely, absolutely.
You know, in the corporate world, while, like you said, all the lack of support you face sometimes in just the sometimes callous attitude or the lack of planning that one faces in helping women come back after having a baby. Like this I experienced. Once you've had a baby and you go away on maternity leave, then it's really like you've been thrown off the ship. You know, you don't really know if I have the job back. Am I going to be taken care of? You know, will I have the same boss? Do bosses still love me? Does the company still remember I exist? You know, a lot of that insecurity, a lot of us working women, when we've had babies, have had to go through. And I think one of the simple ways of supporting mums would just be to have decent planning. So you know, after I've had a baby, what job am I coming back to?
So do you think that it's that the planning comes from the mother or it comes from the job? Who does that planning? I don't know anything about the rules and regulations.
No,
here.
it should. The planning should be at the corporate's end. It should be your bosses. It should be HR that takes on the onus of making sure that you come back to a position where you're able to give back, you know, where you're able to perform, where you're able to deliver. But more often than not, the responsibility falls on the mom. In the sense, you know, even with me, I had to go knocking from door to door to say, hey, I'm now available, you know.
I just have a question to
Yeah,
clarify
sure.
for me. So when a woman here takes maternity leave, do you just disappear or do you keep in contact with everybody or do you work from home a little bit? How does that work?
No, so you disappear in the sense that you are, you know, entirely with your baby. You may wish to keep in touch with the office, and you may even wish to continue being in touch with work. But the problem is that the office is viewing you as a sunk investment. The office is looking at you and saying, oh, she's gone away for 3 months, or she's gone away for 6 months. And, you know, in these 6 months, in any case, we need to hire either a temp resource or we need to bring in someone as a replacement. And when we bring in this person as a replacement, then what are we going to do with her? You know, or she should be comfortable taking a setback in her career. She should be comfortable getting a promotion now 2 years later because she's chosen to have a baby. So she's not going to be as productive.
Yeah,
How
and
long
give
is
smaller-
maternity leave?
Sorry.
How long is maternity leave?
6
here?
months.
6
Really?
months if
Used
you
to
have
be-
a generous organization.
That's amazing.
No, but I believe the government
I
has...
wish I could take 6 months off my job.
No, that's coming from the
amazing.
government recently, Sunny. I mean, it used to be 3 months earlier. The government is now...
In America, I think
Yes.
it's like, I think it's 2 to 3 months only.
Yeah, so the government has now mandated most organizations to try and give 6 months of paid leave, which has come as a mandate now. So that's a good thing, I believe.
UK is 1 year, I think.
Is it?
Yeah,
I'm not aware
UK
of that.
or the Nordics, there's 1 year.
Yeah, even I think 6 months is too less. I mean, because when, you know, you're dealing with how you're looking and you're dealing with everything that's changing inside you, and then there's a little baby. So between the physical and the emotional bit, there's a lot of stuff that you have to deal with.
Right. So then, if you had an employee that came to you right now and said, I'm pregnant and in a few months I'm going to have a baby, what is your plan? What would your plan be for her?
I think I would figure, I mean, one has to discuss when are you coming back to work.
6 months later.
Yeah, so 6 months later. If you're coming back to work 6 months later, one has to plan in the interim, what am I going to do? Alternatively, I then decide that this job, which you were doing until now, I give to someone else, and you're going to come back to another job where we feel you'd be better placed to perform better.
But what if
it's gonna
she
be a
wanted
win-win.
her old job back, but she's disappeared for 6 months? Then what?
Then you have to find the replacement. You know, you have to plan for that. I mean, one doesn't announce pregnancy overnight. You know, there are 9 months until you actually go away. So in those 9 months, it's more than enough time for manager and subordinate to be able to plan and figure what are we going to do in those 6 months.
Sorry, we're just out of time.
Yeah.
One last question that I want to conclude this with. Do you guys really feel that women make better bosses and better leaders, considering the fact that they tend to take a more holistic approach to leadership, to people management? And I mean, yeah, so would love to kind of understand your perspective in that.
I don't think we make better leaders or worse leaders. I think I've seen terrible women leaders and I've seen amazingly inspiring women leaders, and the same goes for men. But the question is, sometimes men answer that differently. So I don't think I think leadership is such a personal thing. You could be a leader that's more aggressive, and that could be male or female. You could be a leader that's a lot more sort of calming and logical and sort of takes decisions with a lot more thought. You could be somebody that's sort of playing on the front foot. But that's got nothing to do with gender, and I think that's the perception that we need to change. And I don't think it's a competition about women are better or men are better. It's about all of us collectively being able to grow together with whatever traits we have as individuals, not based on gender.
So my view is women definitely make better leaders, and women definitely make better leaders because of the people that we are, because of the way we are raised, and because of the way we are fundamentally wired. I think in today's organizations, there is no choice but to have to work with people. It's not even so much about competence functionally as it is about being able to work with people and being able to get the best from people, from having a diverse team and being able to get the best from a diverse team. And I think women win over men hands down. There might be exceptions, but I think by and large, I would certainly argue that for all the traits that women have, they make far better leaders than men. The problem is we don't have enough women leaders.
Sunny, you have a viewpoint on that?
I agree with it's not about gender. I do believe that every single office is very, very different. Every job is different. The requirements are different. If you asked me to be a fireman, I'm sorry, I just could not do that. But if you asked me to...
It's been proven that even women commandos make better commandos as teams than men commandos. It's been proven in research, and it's been proven actually in live demos. So, you know, women could make far better firemen too. It's just that we don't have women firemen. Fire women, exactly.
Right. My biggest... Yes. My biggest issue sometimes, and this is from my own perspective, is women out there sometimes end up being the biggest people who are against everything, who say the most nastiest things that a man would never dream about saying. I'll go to a press conference and the most obnoxious things will come out of a woman's mouth. And I want to say, where are you from? Because I have no idea why you would ask questions like these that are so demeaning, that are so disrespectful in every way. I find that sometimes that happens more from women than it does from men. Maybe I have no idea where that comes from. But that's just my own perspective. And as far as leadership goes, I think that women who are amazing leaders, they're just amazing. You can't beat them. But if there are men that are just as good, that are open, like Hutterfly, like you're amazing. Your company has all these women work. They come into my office, and it's all women, except for one gentleman who didn't speak at all, who comes into I don't know if he's here or not, but it's...
He's here.
He's still not talking. Please stop talking,
he's a
wherever
silent
you
spectator.
are. Just stop talking, because you talk too much. But I do think that there are male leaders out there, like yourself, who are embracing the idea of women voicing their opinions and doing things that they want, and being able to talk about subjects and bringing the four of us on stage with you to talk about some of these extremely important issues. So I do think that there's a shift happening. So whether it's a male leader or a female leader, to me they fall into the same category.
Fantastic.
I just want to say thank you.
Thank
for
you.
making me a
thank
part
you
of Butterfly.
So that's
Okay.
lovely. Thank you, Sunny.
So I would kind of agree with Vani on this, and I think maybe we are more battle wounded than the other women here. But it's. I mean, of course, there are leaders and there are people who look up to both men and women. What I just feel slightly is that women are far more empathetic, and they try to build a team better, whereas a guy would be slightly more self-focused, and he would have all the odds working for him, versus women have to fight against the odds, take care of a team, and make sure that, somewhere you also fight the self-doubt you have, fight your own confidence issues, things happening at home, pregnancy-related breaks, everything that we've talked about. And just, be there that, okay, I have been able to do what I am and what I am doing right now in spite of everything. And so, you tend to look at what are the positives in the person and try to really build that up. And I think the mentoring, coaching kind of mindset women have just works better in actually making the entire team come up than maybe a men team would be there. So I know you've got an A team here, but it's like, again, it's a collective effort.
No, I
which
completely
is there.
agree. I absolutely
versus
agree
if
with
I'm
that.
just talking about individuals, and I would say that individual A versus individual B, if you see their stories, if you look at the life journeys, you will understand that the gender neutrality doesn't really work.
I really want to work for you one day because you seem like you would be the nicest boss. The nicest boss. She'd be like,
I think
okay.
we all want to work with her. I would agree
Yeah,
to that.
I would vouch for that, having worked with Bhavna.
See,
Not
I was
directly,
right.
but for sure.
No, this has been great, ladies. Thank you so much. I think this has been a really fruitful discussion and a very insightful discussion. Can you have a big round of applause for all the panelists here, please, guys? Thank you.
Thank you.
Done? Sunny solo. Look center. Look there. नीचे बढ़ Look center.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, rolling. Yeah, Sunny, your association with FMG, like, what have to say about it?
My association with Butterfly and Summer is something that took a little bit of time for us to figure out what we were going to do. And I know they had a vision and a direction they wanted to go, and I'm happy that we were all on the same page of being able to create great content and create content that I believe people would be interested in, and content that felt real. That's what was important to me.
Absolutely.
Okay, how did Sunny came into your mind for the
Hello! Isn't that every day? Everybody's like, I'm on their mind. No, I'm just
I don't
kidding.
think it's tough for Sunny to come into anyone's mind, for that matter of fact. She's top of the mind recall, clearly. But I think, when you are kind of looking at Horrorfly, and Horrorfly is a fashion beauty portal that kind of, like Sunny said, talks to real women for real issues. And who better than, Sunny to kind of reflect and kind of talk about real issues and real women, because she's had such an interesting life where she's kind of led it with utmost dignity and respect. So we saw that marriage happening absolutely beautifully.
Okay. Sunny, tell us, how was it associating with him and
The association is absolutely amazing. I think that when you can have an association with a company and be able to be on the same page and have the same concerns and be able to be open to suggestions or different ideas, as most people must know, I'm pretty opinionated, and it's, even though I'd like it to be my way or the highway, I know that can't happen, and it has to be a give and take. And I think that everything that we've shot so far has been something that we've agreed on, that it should feel like we're making great content, and I think that's what's most important.
Yeah.
Sunny, how do you feel you are good in business, like shooting as a businesswoman? How do you handle your business-wise?
I think every company is different, and both Daniel and I have a no bullshit approach for a lot of different things. Everything's pretty black and white, straightforward. We don't believe in the idea of making people run around in circles. I think our deal is pretty easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was, and they usually are. And as far as our employees go and everybody, we just believe that everybody should work hard. And I know what I put into my day, and I expect the same thing from my employees, and that's it.
सनी लास्ट क्वेश्चन दूसरे डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म से या कोई भी विमेंस वेब मैगजीन्स हमेशा से रही है, तो एज एन इन्वेस्टर व्हाट आर यू एडिंग जो पहले किसी मैगजीन या किसी डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म में नहीं है?
I don't think it's about what somebody's done or what somebody hasn't done. I think this is about taking ideas that maybe have been spoken about before and giving it our own spin, our own thought, my own opinion of those things, and their statistics and their opinions of how it should be shot and things that we should talk about. I believe that the biggest thing for myself was that it should feel real. It should feel like if anybody could go out and do the things that we're talking about, and or providing the steps of how that woman can accomplish these things.
Sunny, we're talking about Bollywood, like you're talking about equality, like maybe you're talking about gender equality. In Bollywood, do you feel the actress, the heroine, has that kind of a equality, like compared to the hero?
Well, I think that each actor is different. I do believe that there are differences. As far as myself goes, I can only speak about my own experiences and what I've gone through, and it's not been easy. I've had to create my own path, and my team and Daniel and everybody, we have to fight tooth and nail to do everything that we want to. Do I have the best of lineup when I have a film coming out? Do I work with those big A-list actors? No, but I create my own path and I make my own decisions, and I'm happy for that. And I'm happy that I'm able to do things my way, and which is the most important to me. No one's telling me what to do, and I like that.
Okay, Sunny, as you have talked about the
Sunny, one last days a year, what do you do to beat the sun? Actually?
Wait, what?
Sunny days, I mean to say it's hot. Actually.
It's hot outside.
Last question, guys.
So,
What am I doing to beat the sun? I don't know. I'm going to Rajasthan for a month. I'm going to be in the sun every single day. That's going to be a very good question. But if I had to say something, it would be coconut water. It would be a lot of light food, not fried stuff, and light clothing, nothing too heavy, and that would be really uncomfortable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Just, we completely done. Thank you, everybody.